Welcome to the This Mum Loves Tech podcast, the go-to show for female business owners who want to simplify tech and get the support they need to grow their online businesses with confidence. I'm Nicola Walsh, your podcast host. I'm also a mum to two cheeky boys and I love tech, so you don't have to. I'm here to share actionable tips, tools, and strategies that will help you streamline your business and make the tech work for you. So, whether you're watching after the kids have gone to bed or listening while on the school run, let's dive into today's episode and make tech that little bit easier. Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Mum Loves Tech. Today, I'm super excited because the first guest on the This Mum Loves Tech podcast, we have Michelle Chapman from the Elite Academy of Development and Wellbeing. And we're going to be talking today about why we fear the tech. So, Michelle has just done an absolutely brilliant masterclass inside the This Mum Loves Tech membership. And I wanted to get her on here so we could just talk through a bit about why tech is so overwhelming for so many of us and how we can maybe break through it. So Michelle, hello and welcome.
Hi.
So please tell us a little bit about you before we get into all this tech talk. Tell
Yeah.
us a little bit about you and what you do.
Okay, so I've been coaching for, and I'm trying to think about it, almost 20 years now, which feels like a really long time. And over the years, I've changed the way that I think about things, my understanding of things. Like anything, the more that we learn about things, the more we understand things, the better we get. Okay, and so over time, I've changed the way I approach coaching. So now, fundamentally, I work with people to get the absolute best out of themselves, but by taking more off their mind rather than putting more in. Because often when people try to get better at things, they want to, whether it's learning tech or learning anything, they try to put more into their head. And sometimes what we really need to do is take a lot off our mind.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, I know that especially when it comes to a task that I'm not looking forward to, I give myself 100 excuses as to why I can't do it before I actually start it. A lot of the listeners here are going to be fellow mums in business, and you only get a few hours in the day to work on your business. And one of the things I love that you said was how we sit down and we immediately think, I've only got 6 hours. What am I going to do in these 6 hours? And actually, if we didn't think about that and just got on with it, we'd actually make more of the time.
Yeah, and I think sometimes it's like people say, yes, but that's true. And well, it kind of is true, but you've also got the thinking on it too. Yes, there is a certain amount of time that we have, but the actual amount we think about that time interferes. So it takes away from our productivity. Yeah.
Yes, it's such a good point. So one of the things that I get with a lot of my clients is they come to me and they say that they are stupid when it comes to tech, like that they can't get this. So maybe you could talk us through a bit about why do so many people have these thoughts, these negative thoughts when it comes to tech, and maybe explain a little bit about how they could work through them. I think that would be really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, so we talked about it on the workshop around learning, and actually, learning tech isn't any different from learning anything. It's just that sometimes the minute we talk about tech, we've got certain thoughts that we have around ourselves and tech. Are we good at tech? Are we not good at tech? So if we've already got some kind of pre-existing ideas about ourselves, that's part of the problem. But really, everything that we learn, we go through certain stages of learning. Okay, so right the way from if we don't know that we want to learn something new, and we call it unconscious incompetence. So it's like if I don't know something, then I don't know that I don't know it, or I don't know that I'm not good at it. So you could call this kind of blissful ignorance, which I quite like, and we are going to be blissfully ignorant about all kinds of things, but we don't know because we don't know. So the only problem comes when we try to do something and then we realize we're not good at it. So
Yeah.
then we become what we call consciously incompetent. So I now know that I'm not good at something. This is where all of the overthinking comes in. So we're at this stage where we have this realization that we can't do something or we're not good at it. Well, pretty much always when we try to do something new, whether it's tech or whether it's, playing tennis for the first time or, anything that we try to do, we have to learn to get good at it. So it's not unusual that we would have, a point where we go, oh, I'm new to this and I'm not good at it. The question is, what do we do at that stage?
Yeah. Yeah. Because when you were talking about that, I think the thing that popped into my head is like, was fishing for some reason. So I have never been fishing in my life ever. So I am, like you said, unconsciously ignorant about my skills. I could be the best fisher in the entire world. Well, no, not that's a bit of an exaggeration, but I don't know. And until I try it, I will never find out.
But you know, this is funny because I was at Centre Parks and we did archery and I was brilliant. Like, who knew? Like, I won. I came away with this little certificate. I was like really proud of myself. Like, I'm apparently, and someone said, oh, you're basically like, you know, what, Marion or whoever it is, you know, in the Robin
I'll
Hood.
be Marion, yeah.
And I was like, yay. But I didn't know, you know, so that's great. But equally, you know, I think I did something else, like, was it laser tag or something? And I was atrocious at it, you know. So it's, if I'd kept going though, like in that moment, I guess the first thing is some things we're just not good at, and that's okay. It's like, you know what else? I'm not good at bowling either. You know, no, I'm just like, I'm okay. I'll lob the ball and I might improve, but I'm just generally not very good at it. And I'm not really worried about that. But I'm not wanting to get good at it. I'm not, if I wanted to get good at it, I might need to make some more investment of energy or something to move me on to the next stage. And that's the question when it comes to tech. You know, there are some things sometimes people say, well, I'm just not good at tech and it doesn't matter. But if you then say, actually, but I want to get good at tech because I want to push my business, or there are goals or aspirations or something that I want to do, I actually do want to get good at it. And that kind of changes things.
Yeah, so that is the key, is it's only a problem if the thoughts that we have in our head are stopping us. Like if we're quite happy with our level of ability at something, then it doesn't matter whether we're good at it or not. It's just that's just how it is. But if it's our thoughts that are stopping us from, like you said, growing our business or setting that course up, or getting started with email marketing, whatever it is that you know in the back of your mind, I need to do this for my business,
Mm.
but I'm no good at it.
Mm.
That's where the problem comes, and that's where we need to work through it.
It is. And the thing that's the biggest kind of shame is that a lot of people go to do something, they want to do something, they want to have a new goal, or you know, run a new business or whatever it is, and because they reach that point of, you know, what I'd call you know, conscious incompetence, so I now know that I'm not good at it and can't cope with that. It's like, oh my god, this is so, I'm this or I'm that, and then they create these false stories about themselves. And the question is, what happens at that point? Because a lot of people will give up because they don't like those thoughts that they're having about themselves. They believe them, they take them seriously, and then just stop. So, how many goals, how many aspirations, how many things that we have wanted to do have we stopped doing because it made us feel bad about ourselves? And that's the shame of it, I think.
Yeah, and I often say to a lot of people when they say to me, "Oh, I'm no good at this. I'm never going to get this." And I'm like, "But have you ever done it before? Why would you know how to do this? Just because and I think comparing ourselves to others and where they're at, just because they know how to do it, you don't know the pathway that they've taken to be able to know how to do it. If you've not done the same learning, if you've not put the same investment in, like you said, in time or coaching or whatever to learn this thing, why would you know it?
And it's interesting actually, because what's popping into my mind is a conversation I heard with a musician a little while back. And somebody said to this musician, and I can't remember what he was. I'm going to say guitarist, but I'm not sure. And someone said, "Wow, you know, you are so amazing. You are so talented. You know, were you born with this kind of? Is this something that you were given to this world to do? You know?" And he went, "Yeah, it's practice." And they said, "No, no, but you, even if I did it, you know, you just that good though, you know, you're so much above everybody else, you know, you're just, I listen to you." And he goes, "Yeah, it's practice." And it's like, no matter how many times they kind of tried to make it into something else, he was like, "No, it's just practice." So I guess what the question is how or why do we get in the way of continuing that practice? Why do we give up before we have practiced sufficiently to allow it to take us to that next level?
Yeah, and one of the things you said in the masterclass was get into that state of flow where it becomes easy for us. And one of the examples we discussed was when you're driving and you get to somewhere and you think, how did I get here? Like, and you've obviously got there safely, and I'm sure the way you drove it was safe, but it was so you were so in the flow of driving, and you weren't overthinking the decisions you were making, the indications, all that kind of the lane changes, whatever. You just got to your destination, and you're now there.
Yeah.
And that's like, we want to get into that state when we're working on stuff in our business, that it just happens. Like, you go check your emails and you see you've already scheduled your newsletters, or you've scheduled that social media post because you just did it naturally as part of the general day to day of running your business.
Yeah, and that is part of the stages. That is one of the stages of learning, when we reach that point of unconscious competence, which means that we're just good at it. We're flowing, we're natural. And do you know, it's not just about being efficient and effective as well. I mean, being efficient and effective, being good at things is important, but I think it's also about the love of what you do. Like, do we really want every single day to be a complete chore where we sit down and we like get right in our heads and make it, really hard? Sometimes that happens. That's, but day to day, wouldn't it be lovely if we kept going for long enough that we reached that point where things started to flow and it was natural? And that will happen. It just takes a little bit of time to move through the stages. That's available to everyone.
Yeah, that is brilliant. And I think we covered a lot of that in the workshop. So if you're listening to this and you're thinking, I'm loving what Michelle's saying, Michelle did a lovely workshop, how to overcome the tech overwhelm and get from fear to focus. And it was part of the This Mum Loves Tech membership. The link will be in the show notes if you want to find out more about becoming a member and listening to the whole of Michelle's masterclass. But I think we've obviously talked a lot about the tech. I'd just love to know a bit more about you, Michelle, and how have you got to where you are today, and helping people come to these realizations?
Do you know what it is? Is I wasn't a very confident child. Like, I wasn't, or a young adult. And so sometimes I do look at, and this is not a dig in any way, but I do look at fellow coaches sometimes who they're almost like naturally confident. And I was never like that. I was always very scared, very small, like a little mouse, very, and not necessarily overtly, but inside I always felt small. So for me, I started coaching nearly 20 years ago now, and learning the skills and the techniques were really valuable and important. But it's what I have seen in myself. It's like, okay, the more that you start to see, it's like the worst thing that happens is the what we call unrecognized thought, which means I'm thinking and I don't even know it. I don't know what I'm doing. But the more that it's like shining a light. And I guess that's where I've come to, how I am. And I'm, running executive retreats, which does exactly this. It's about expanding our awareness. So when things show up in our head, they don't mean the same thing. So, something, the I'm not good enough thought, for example, or, I'm small or I'm insignificant thought, we can have these awful thoughts show up inside our heads. That's not the issue. The issue is, what do we think that those thoughts mean? And if we take them seriously, it will stop us in our tracks. And I guess that's what I've seen, is just that actually I can have these thoughts and it's just a habit. It doesn't actually have to mean anything about me. And that's what I call confidence from the inside. It's like, it's not a wall that I have to put up to make sure that everyone sees this side of me. It's like, no, this is just me. And I think that's been the most important thing in terms of my growth, is that I never wanted to create an illusion of confidence. I just wanted to feel good about me.
Oh, that's lovely. So what are the different ways that people can work with you? Like, how do you help your clients to find this inner confidence in themselves?
So I have a range of different kind of options depending on, where you're at and what you want. So in the academy, we have online programs, and I guess that's the most cost effective way to come into the academy. Things like looking at confidence, getting rid of anxiety so that we can just perform to our best. I also run hybrids, and I'm loving the hybrids, I have to say, at the moment, because you get the training plus coaching. So it gives you the opportunity to say, okay, so I heard that, but how does that relate to this part of my life? And I think that's quite important to have that kind of interaction. And then I have my retreat experiences. So I have my private retreat, which is where I am now. And it's all one to one, where people get to come along and just step back. Because sometimes you just need to step back. It's like get off the hamster wheel just for a little bit, step back, and then learn a little bit about the way the mind works, about the way consciousness works, and then you can kind of step on but tentatively to see how it goes back together. So yeah, those are my kind of that's my main focus for next year or this year now.
Yeah, no, we're in 2025 now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can see you're in a lovely, lovely space behind you. It's got nice calming colours in it and everything. Yeah, I can see that being a lovely place to go. And I'd just love to talk a bit more about why, you're saying about the hybrid and why you feel it's so important to not just do the learning, to actually have that opportunity to talk it through and put it into practice. Like, how are you seeing that making such a difference?
Well, so a lot of people say one to one is king. And I don't disagree with that, because you get to have that conversation, that direct, and with any kind of coach, you pay more for the one to one, and you get that that immersion. But there is something about sitting back and not being the focus that allows us to look inside a little bit more. And what I find is on trainings, often if I run a training, someone will come to me at the end who I've not really made a connection with for the whole time. It might be 2 or 3 days, and it's a big group, and they might come to me at the end and they'll say, "You said this." And because they're sort of sitting back and just absorbing it and letting it wash over them, they get something slightly different. So the hybrid allows people to do both of those things. They get to sit back, let this information wash over them in a kind of like listening to gentle music. So it's less intense. And then things start to show up for them in a more kind of natural way. But then with the one-to-one, they can kind of say, okay, so tell me about that. And they can go deeper into the things that have showed up for them. I don't know if that kind of makes sense, but
Yeah, no, it definitely does. Like, because I think if you just do the one-to-one stuff, you kind of almost feel like you have to make a decision there and then. And sometimes you can't. Like, you need time to process it, and then questions come up.
yeah,
That's why when we have like the master classes in the membership, or I do one of the free ones, I always make sure there's a thread afterwards in the Facebook group that people can come and ask questions, because it's always when you get to the end of something and people are like, have you got any questions? And you've spent so much time taking it in, your brain is just overloaded, and you might have a great question, but at that moment in time you just can't think of it, because like you were
absolutely.
saying, you've got all these kind of things also in your head. So having that chance to kind of take that break, process the information, and then come and ask your question.
A guy that I know was on a training once, and they were talking about how, sorry, I'm just saying there is a huge fly, if you can see
Yeah.
it flying around, and I'm
Oh,
just
it
like,
was only my head at one point. I don't know if you realised that.
he's now on the screen, but we're just going to let him join in.
Yeah, he's doing his thing.
But there was a guy I know who said that he listened to a talk about how we live in this thought created reality, and how the problems we're kind of almost making up in our heads as we go. And he spent the whole time just arguing and saying, no, it's way more complicated than that. And it wasn't until he was driving home that the whole thing just hit him. And he was like, oh, it's actually true. And this is how the mind works. Like, we think it's this very cause and effect thing where, okay, this happens and then this happens. And it can do, but it doesn't have to. So the importance is that, that people are reflecting and stuff shows up for us at different times. And so allowing for that is really important, and not just important, but almost necessary, because sometimes we get more value when we're away from it, or we're, standing waiting for a bus, that kind of thing. And then suddenly something occurs to us. And that's how the mind works naturally. So to me, allowing for that is kind of like working with how the mind works naturally.
Yeah, I always find that I get loads of ideas just as I'm going to bed,
Yes. Yeah.
because your brain has finally had that chance to kind of start to slow down. And then it's like, oh,
Yeah. Mine is in the car. If I take my daughter to school, driving back. So it's like 20 minutes where there's nothing I can do, and I'm all relaxed, and then the thoughts just, and it's like, yeah, that's a really nice time to just let things come.
Yeah, no, driving is definitely one of them. I've got to the point where I start like recording things, like make myself little voice notes because I'm like, I'm gonna forget this by the time I get home. And this is such a good idea.
Voice notes are the answer, I think, to many, many things. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you, Michelle. It's been lovely to chat to you. My last question, because obviously this is the List Mum Loves Tech podcast. Do you have a favorite tech tool that you use within your business or something that you kind of couldn't run your business without?
Do you know what? I don't, but what I would say is that I have recently been introduced to Notion, which
Oh,
I've
yeah.
a lot. So I don't know if I would say like I couldn't run my business without it. But it's been new to me, and I've got a new VA, and she's like, this is how I work. So I'm like, oh, okay, we'll work with this then. And it has made everything so much easier in terms of working with someone else and keeping. So where I would have had about a million Word documents where I would have created it and probably never gone back to it, everything's in one place. So at the moment, I'm loving Notion.
Ah, love that. Yeah, no, having an organization tool is definitely a business owner's best friend. Well, where can people find out more about you and what you do?
So the easiest places are I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn are the two kind of main places. And then the website is www.elitepartnership.co.uk.
Okay, lovely. And is it just your name on Instagram and Facebook? They just need to search for Michelle
That's my
Chapman and
name.
they'll find
Yes.
you.
Yeah.
Lovely. Well, as I said before, if you are interested in hearing more from Michelle and her full masterclass, which was amazing, she gave us some exercises and things to do and think about while we were going along, then yeah, you want to head over to This Mum Loves Tech /membership, and then you'll get access to not only Michelle's masterclass, but all of the masterclasses that I've done on tools like Canva and MailerLite and Google Workspace. And you also get the opportunity to have 3 Q&A calls with me every month so we can bust through your tech. And what Michelle has beautifully highlighted to us is that, you know, learning the tech tools is only one of the steps. It's having the right mindset to take that learning in that really will help us kind of progress further and faster within our business. So yeah, I just want to say a huge thank you to Michelle for coming on the podcast today.
It's been great. Really enjoyed it.
And yeah, I hope I will be back soon with another fabulous guest. And I hope you all have a lovely day.